The West Ham Massive are pleased to support Iron Supporting Food Banks. They are a group of West Ham fans and friends inspired by the work of other football food banks around the country. They collect food and cash donations for a Newham food bank in Beckton, who supplies 7 distribution centres in the borough 7 days a week and hand out several hundred 3-day emergency food packs every month to families in need. They are also working with other groups to improve conditions for vulnerable adults and children in the Newham community. You can help by making a donation to their Just Giving page. You will find the link to this in the description section of the video details in this stream. Thanks for your support. Come on, you Irons. Hello and welcome once again to the West Ham Massive. Thank you for joining me, guys, and please don't forget to drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and make sure you hit the bell icon for alerts of new content. Don't forget to click all, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much indeed for your support in this particular matter. We are here for the next episode of Mount Matty Rushmore. Now, there's many people that you'll be watching that will be unaware of this particular concept, so allow me to fill you in. So basically what we do here at the West Ham Massive is we get a guest in the hot seat and they will choose players from their time involved with West Ham United, and we get them up a ladder to chisel away at a mountainside to put these players' likeness on the side of this mountain for eternity. Now, they might decide to go route one and choose the very best of the best, but they could take a few other routes. And for instance, cult heroes might be another avenue they might want to explore. Academy graduates, with the guest I've got, I'm suspecting it might be something to do with that, but we'll see. Could choose bad boys, for instance, players they love to hate, entertainers, nice guys, combination of the above, or something completely different. It's their mountain. They can adorn it any way they wish. And I have got a really special guest with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I have got Mr. Tony Carr, MBE. How are you, sir?
Oh, good, thanks, Rob. I'm all good. Anxious to get going and spill my mountainside and carve the heads.
Well, we've given you I gave you a link to a YouTube tutorial that took you to a stone masonry class, and you've been genning up on it. You've got your hammer, you've got your chisel. I'm going to be at the bottom of the ladder, Tony. I'm going to have a cup of tea in my hand. I'm going to foot the ladder for you. You know, never let it be said I don't help out. But you'll be up there and you will be beavering away and getting your 4 heads carved on the side of this mountain. Now, I'm sure that with your many years at the club, what was it, 43 years, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
There are many, many names that are going to be not making the cut, shall we say, but we're going to obviously get into some honourable mentions as we go along. Tell me, Tony, so you're going to go up the ladder armed with your hammer and your chisel. What do you think as your first choice is going to be and the reasons behind it, please?
Yeah, this is really difficult. Simple little interview turns into a test of my knowledge, trying to remember all the players because I do go back a long way, and it's not been easy at all. And to be quite honest, I've took the easy route. I've gone the predictable route, I have to say, simply because it'd be unfair to do otherwise in terms of impact and status, achievements, honours, etc. So I've sort of took it along those lines.
Okay.
And the first head I'm going to carve, a defender. I'll leave the guests hanging for a moment, the subscribers hanging. And there was many. Glenn Johnson for one. James Tompkins, another. All good players. Paul Konchesky, although came back as a player after being with us within the academy and achieved international status. But I've gone for Rio Ferdinand, because an icon of a defender, a massive talent. I can remember just in training, I'd say, we'd demonstrate certain stuff, and I'd say, look, we want to do that. I want balls to be dropped into there, and so on and so. And Rio would get the ball, and he'd go like this, and he'd just do it, just so natural. And I go, yeah, like that, Rio. But everyone else was struggling to sort of find the right spot, get the right pace, get the right height, etc. So Rio's outstanding player, outstanding achievements, and a really good guy, and comes from a very good family. And predictable maybe, but I couldn't do it without someone like the icon of Rio and the honours he achieved at Manchester United and England. I think the only disappointment that he might have is that, like many hundreds of players before him, they're disappointed that they didn't win anything with England. But I think next year might be different, with a different bunch of players, and we might have our own Declan Rice amongst that, but that's another story for another day. But so my first one, Rob, is Rio, and I'd go with defender for that one. So here you go.
Rio, sorry, Tone. With Rio, correct me if I'm wrong. He started out in midfield, didn't he?
Yeah, in earlier days, he was a forward.
Okay.
He always wanted to be a centre forward. And he then dropped into midfield.
Yep.
And it was me and the youth team that persuaded him that I want him to play centre back. And but funnily enough, when I did my book, and this is not a plug, this is when I did my biography last year. Obviously, I interviewed half a dozen or so players, and Rio was one of them. And he said, yeah, funnily enough, he said, I remember that when we did that, and I played at the back, etc., etc. He said, but the weird thing about it was when I made my debut for the club, I played in midfield. He played in midfield. I think it was against Sheffield Wednesday, I believe. But I stand corrected there. I'm not Mr. Stat, but I think it was Sheffield Wednesday. And he said, correct. I played in midfield. So, what that shows is the talent of the player, that he could be that adaptable and adjustable at that level. At that level, you couldn't see like a young Tony Cottee or a young Jermaine Defoe making their debut in any position other than up front.
Yeah,
as a striker, and brilliant as they were at that, you couldn't see them playing right back or centre midfield. It just. But Rio went on midfield. Yeah, I can play there. Centre back. Yeah, I can play there. He was that good. So Rio is the first choice.
Just to expand upon that, you obviously had the idea to move him from midfield to centre back, which is obviously where he's spent his entire professional career. What was the reason behind that? What was it you saw in him that made you go centre back? That's his position.
I was on a course. It was an FA course, and it was at Lilleshall, which was the old FA training centre before they got St George's Park.
Yeah.
And the guest speaker was Andy Roxburgh, the Scott guy that was technical director for UEFA.
Yeah.
And he was doing a presentation on the World Cup that had just gone on. And he was talking about the German team.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'd won it, obviously. And he was saying that the Germans' philosophy was they played three at the back, two high wing backs. But what they did is they put their most talented midfield player as the centre of the three defenders.
Got it.
But bearing in mind at that period of time, most teams were playing 4-4-2.
Yep.
So what they tried to work it that the central player could break into midfield with the ball and outnumber the two defending midfield players in front of them.
Got it.
And I had a sort of light bulb moment. I thought, Rio can do that.
Yeah.
And so I went to Harry first, Redknapp, and because Harry was the manager, and I said to him, I want to change the team, Harry, and I want to play 3-5-2. 3 midfield players, 3 defenders, 2 high midfield players. Sorry, let's start it again. 3 centre backs, 2 high wing backs, 3 in midfield, and 1 up front, or 3-4-2 with 1 off the striker.
Got it.
So that's what we did. I think that works out 10-11. I've got my numbers up there.
That's fine. Don't worry.
But it was basically to get Rio in the back 3.
Yeah.
So I changed the youth team. We played 5 at the back, 3 in midfield, 2 up front.
And he had no qualms about it at any point. Just went, yeah, I'll do that.
No, he didn't. No, he said, I don't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. And he didn't sort of say it confrontationally. He just said, I don't want to play at the back. I want to be up front and helping score goals. I want to get forward. So I said, well, my idea behind it, Rio, is that you play as the central player at the back and you'll constantly break into midfield, outnumber the midfield of the opposition, hopefully, because you've got the talent to do it. And we had the talent in the team to do it.
Yeah.
And if you go all the way, it doesn't matter. You know, you go all the way and get on the edge of the opposition box if the movement allows it. But obviously that's our starting point, 3 at the back. And it went, all right, okay, I'll give it a go. And that was the start of it.
When was the first time that you remember? Because he was tagged fairly early on in his West Ham career. He was tagged as the new Bobby Moore, the next Bobby Moore. Do you remember sort of, did that ever weigh heavy on him? Because obviously being tagged the next any legend of a club is a heavy burden. And obviously none more so than West Ham with Bobby Moore. I mean, was that ever something that bothered him, or did he rise to the challenge?
To be honest, it wasn't spoken about much at the training ground, or it was something you might read or hear, but it wasn't actually spoken. And to be honest, Rio was such a bubbly, outgoing character. It wouldn't have bothered him. I mean, I remember years before when I was a young player at the club, years and years ago, we had a young Kevin Locke.
Yep.
Who played left side centre back, although Bobby wasn't left footed. Bobby, more or less, Kenny Brown played on the right and Bobby was on the left of Kenny.
Yep.
And Kevin Locke had blonde hair, played at the back, and everyone said, the new Bobby Moore. And I think that was a tougher burden to carry. I don't think it bothered Rio. And I don't remember us ever speaking about it, either with the staff or me to Rio. Because my mantra had always been, you're you ain't anybody else. You ain't trying to emulate anybody else. You're you. Just go out and show them what you're about. And so no, I don't think it bothered him.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I think Rio was a fantastically gifted player, and when you look at what he won in football, multiple Premier Leagues. Unfortunately, none of this was with West Ham, regrettably.
No, exactly.
But what he did in his career, absolutely amazing. Champions League winner, Premier League winner. Multiple 80. I think he got 80 odd caps for England. He captained England on multiple occasions. So would I be right in saying that although he didn't want to move into midfield all those years ago, that he's actually forgiven you now?
I hope so. I hope so. He didn't do bad, did he?
He didn't. I don't think anyone could say otherwise. But well, Tony, that I'm looking up the ladder, right? And I've got to say that crash course in stonemasonry, that YouTube tutorial that I sent you over the week, you've really done well, I have to say. Your hands are looking a little bit worse for wear on it. And you've got 3 more to go.
You didn't get too many chippings come down on your head.
No, it's fine. I had my hard hat on. It was all good. So, did a risk assessment beforehand, all that. So, but you're now going back up the ladder and you're now going to carve out number 2 of 4. So, where are you taking me now?
I've had a bit of thought about that. And as I say, my 4 are obvious, but there's good reason for me being obvious. And I'd like to say afterwards, the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 near misses, really, because there are good cases for many, many others.
Yeah.
But I think these 4 are obvious because of their achievements. And if we now go into midfield, I'm going to pick 3 from 2 from midfield and 1 midfield come forward.
Okay.
If you like. And my next pick is going to be Michael Carrick. And not because he played with Rio at Manchester United, because he was a few years later than Rio, but he was the, if you like, the unsung hero for many years, and wouldn't say underappreciated. That's unfair, but he was the unsung hero. But us, and certainly myself within the club, had no doubt that this player had outstanding talent and could go all the way. And like a lot of these things, it's just about getting that opportunity. And he was, as you know, he was in the 99 FA Youth Cup winning team where he absolutely shone and was absolutely outstanding with all the other 10, to be honest, because it was a complete performance from the team. And probably as a coach all them years at the club, it was probably my most complete performance of the manager, as the manager of the team in any game we played. And Michael was outstanding. That left foot, right foot, could pass short, could pass long, had great vision, understood the game, could play 1 and 2 touch with ease, and understood the game, completely understood the game, and he knew his role to create and make goals. And I said to him many years later that when he was with the youth team, he used to score a few goals, but obviously as he developed as a player at West Ham and then at United, obviously Spurs in between, he played a more disciplined, more holding role. But nevertheless, a great player. So again, a great kid. I still speak to him now occasionally, and he's always got the time to talk and discuss things. And as I say, his brother Graham came down as well a few years later. Didn't quite have the same attributes as Michael, but he was a good player. The injury curtailed his career. But Michael Carrick is the next carving. I'm just looking at a picture now, just putting my first chip into the wall, into the mountain, and I'm chipping away. And Michael Carrick's number 2.
Obviously, with Michael, I mean, Rio was from the other side of London to where West Ham obviously are. He was from Peckham, and Michael was from the other end of England. I mean, he was from Newcastle way.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Can you remember how it came about that Michael ended up coming?
I don't think it wouldn't happen today because of the academy system wouldn't allow it. And he was training with a number of clubs up in the northeast. He went to the club in is it the Wallsend Boys Club? I think Wallsend Boys Club up in Newcastle, where lots of Newcastle and northeast players began their careers, and trained at Newcastle, trained at Middlesbrough, and was a talent. Although he hadn't actually at this point signed for anybody. And we had a scout in the northeast. Funnily enough, we had 2 scouts in the northeast. And one of the scouts said to Jimmy Hampson, who was our head of recruitment, I'd like to bring this boy down next week during half term for you to have a look at him. And that's what he did. He came down for a week, if you like, a trial, I suppose you'd call it, or for us to have a look at him, and more importantly, for him to have a look at us. because it's important that, you know, the player comes down from that distance. He's a long way from his family. He can't go home for the weekend every weekend. And it's a tough call. So he's got to be sure that he's coming down for the right reasons, because it's happened before. Players come down and after 3 months they want to go home. They're homesick. But Michael came down with his parents and the scout, and he trained with us, and we liked what we saw. Didn't go overboard. We said we think he's got great talent. I think he'd suit a club like West Ham because he's in inverted commas, he's a footballer. You know, he ain't getting about the pitch putting tackles in or what, you know, winning headers. He's a technical footballer, and he'd suit West Ham down to the ground. And he did that a couple of times, and then it was decision time because we would now want to sign him. And he felt that it also trialled at Chelsea. Which you think, oh, here we go. Chelsea, because, you know, the Abramovich era had begun, and they were throwing money hand over fist at top level and at the academy level, and still are. And the one thing he said, and his mum and dad are lovely people, his mum and dad, they said to us, the reason he signed for West Ham was because the moment he walked in the door, he felt at home. He felt as if we were grateful, if you like, if that's the right term to use. And his mum and dad felt at home. Come in, have a cup of tea, sit down. How you doing? How was your journey today? Giving them the time of day.
Yeah.
And trying to create that environment where people felt comfortable. They can come into the environment and express themselves and not be under pressure or feel afraid to try something. And his dad said to me, his mum and dad said to me, when we went to Chelsea, it was a little bit cold. I'll go and sit over there. The boy's going to train over there. Just sit there. And it was all a little bit, you know, like a doctor's waiting room. You know, it was a little bit cold. And West Ham had a warmer atmosphere, a warmer environment. And he signed. Full stop, he signed. And obviously, eventually, we got the house in Romford, which I think they still use. We used to call it Australia House because at that period when we first had it, we had a lot of boys coming over from Australia. You know, Richard
about the mid-90s, that would have been, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Chrissy Coyne and early 90s. Richard Garcia, Jamie Coyne, and there was another one. God, names escape me at the moment, but it will come back to me. And Bob and Val, who run the house for us, because it was like a 13-bedroom house. It was 2 houses knocked into one, basically. It was a big house, just in Romford, around the back of the shopping centre. Okay. And he loved it there because he loved Bob and Val. He said, he readily said, if it wasn't for Bob and Val, he might not have settled. So that says something about the environment, the people, and obviously he became a star in his own right at the club, then at Tottenham, and then went on to great things at Manchester United, and won all the things that Rio won: Champions League, Premier Leagues, Cups, etc., etc. And could I just tell you a story that Michael told me?
Please do.
He said, because I said to him one day, what's Alex Ferguson like? And he said, you never knew how to take him, really, sometimes. He said, you never knew how to take him. He said, and I'll tell you a story. We played Malmo in the Champions League on a Tuesday night.
Okay.
Away at Malmo in Sweden.
Yeah.
And he said it was one of those nights that everything I did, it turned to gold. Every pass went where it should go. I could see the opposition. I knew where it was going to go, and I intercepted it. It was one of those nights that everything I did worked perfectly. I made goals. I stopped goals. I intercepted balls. I fed people. He said for about 90 minutes, he said, I don't think I hardly gave the ball away at all. And it wasn't just simple passes. It was telling passes. So it was one of them nights. He said, we were training on the following Friday And he said, on Fridays at Old Trafford, or Carrington, the training ground, I should say, he said it was fiery. Really, they used to have a very simple format, warm up, a few sprints, and then an 8v8 for about 30 minutes. And he said the 8v8, he said, was sometimes harder than the game we had on the Saturday. For the first, he said, it was that competitive, really, really competitive. He said, and it was all done in the right spirit, but he said it was really, really, if you didn't do it, if he wasn't on it, you know, there'd be all the other players, the Nevilles and on the Butts, the Keens, they'd be on you. They'd be on you. Come on, get it. You're not
keeping your standards high.
He said, and I walked off the pitch. I thought, I've had a good week here. He said, and as we were walking off the pitch, Fergie come put his arm around me. He said to me, I can't do the Scottish accent, I'm afraid. He said to me, Michael, he said, you were brilliant the other night. He said, probably one of the best games you've had for United. You were brilliant. He said, but tomorrow you're on the bench. he said, you're not playing. He said, I was absolutely gutted in one part. He said, but elated that he'd said that to me. He said he was very good at softening the blow if he was going to reshuffle the team.
He didn't sort of like break it and say, "Oh, I'm resting you."
He said he was. He let me down with ringing praise.
Oh dear. He didn't sort of like try and sort of dress it up and say, "Oh, I'm just resting you, Michael. I'm saving you for the bigger games to come." Oh dear, Fergie. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, no. Listen, he was
funny story, but you know.
He was a fantastic player. I got a lot of time for Michael Carrick, and he's obviously doing some great things in the managerial realm now for Middlesbrough.
He's doing well at Middlesbrough. Poor start to the season.
Yeah, and turned it around.
God, oh dear. I think I don't know how many they've won on the trot. I ain't following it that close, but every time I look at their results, they've won again or they've drawn away, and they're doing well. I think they've got a good chance of being in the top 6.
Yeah,
for the playoffs.
I think they've got a good chance. I think, and he's got a very bright future. Can you envisage? And I'm not necessarily saying anytime soon, although you never know. Could you ever envisage a set of circumstances where he comes back to West Ham as first team coach, manager, whatever?
Who knows? Who knows? This game turns up all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So why not? Who knows? It's one of those things that is one. If he's successful, he becomes a more sought after property as a coach, stroke manager. Whether he would come back to West Ham is another matter. I don't know. But I wouldn't rule it out. Let's put it that way. But as Jimmy Greaves once said, it's a funny old game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he, obviously you say you speak to him, does he still sort of like, he still have a sort of like a love and affection for the club as far as you can tell?
Most definitely. They all do. All the players that left us, I haven't met one of them that said, what a club West Ham are. Not one of them. They might say it about a certain individual they didn't get on with, which is that happened in any workplace.
Oh yeah.
But no, that they all talk with affection. They all talk with affection. They really do. Because I think I saw one of them quoted somewhere. I can't remember which player it was now. That said, the most important time for your development is when you're a youth team player, because that sets the standards. It sets the environment. It sets all the habits that will take you into a professional career. And if you haven't got those good habits and they're not involved in a good environment, they can steer off course in their career. So that was always the important thing for me, that I'd try to create the right environment. When I say me, we as a football club, as an academy, we would try, the Paul Heffers of this world and Peter Braybrookes that I work with and many, many others, and Kevin Keane, who's there now, and people, all good people who work very, very hard. Jimmy Hampson, scouting and so on, all very, very good to set and create the right environment. Because if you don't get that, and you're not together, it can upset everything you're trying to achieve. So that's important. Yeah, they all think. Going back to your question, Rob, I've not met one that's been scathing about the football club. They might not like individuals, but the club, no, they love it. They always look back with affection, especially their youth team days.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. The one thing that I think was missing from Michael's career, and I think probably even he would probably point to this as something that he wishes he had more of, England caps. I think he had about 30 odd, which I think for a player of his ability is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, fair enough, he existed at an era when we had a very strong central midfield core, but come on, 30 caps?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the only reason for me that there was a lot of very, very good midfield players around at the time. You know, Gerrard's at Liverpool, who was a fixture in the England squad at that time. And so it was, don't think anyone doubted his ability, but it was just a matter of trying to get him in and where does he play, etc. But no, great player.
Yeah, no, I'm looking up at the ladder, from the bottom of the ladder tone. I'm looking up. You've now completed your second masterpiece, and I'll tell you, it's a sight to behold. I've got to say, but there's no time to rest on your laurels, Mr. Carr. I must send you back up that ladder. Yeah. Hammer, chisel in your hand. They're really starting. You're getting calluses on your fingers and all sorts. But sorry, I absolutely insist. You've started the job. You must finish. So get yourself up that ladder, Mr. Carr. Number 3.
I've just had a look at a picture of this next player just to get his face in my mind so I can start carving.
Good.
And I've gone up the ladder and I'm going with another midfield player.
Okay.
Who I really can't leave out because I admire him so much. Like I do all of them, I have to say. He's not anyone special in terms of he's the favourite. He's Frank Lampard Jr. I think for what he's achieved is unbelievable. And when I interviewed him and spoke to him when I was doing my book, he said to me, the only thing I ever wanted to do when I was a kid was play for West Ham. He was a West Ham fan, still got a big affection for the club, and obviously got into the team and got a lot of stick at one point from the fans.
Yes.
And I have to say, because if we were at home and I could get to the home games, I'd always be at the home games. And I have to say, it used to upset me when I heard it from the terraces when they booed him and such like. And but he came through that, and I admire him so much for his strength of character and his mental fortitude, which rubbed off from his dad, who I know was the coach at the time. But people accused Harry of nepotism in terms of picking him because he was a relation. He was his nephew. But Harry ain't got that sentiment in him as a manager. If you're not good enough, he won't pick you because you're his nephew or his uncle's brother or anything like that. He'd pick you because he thinks you're good enough. And Harry was strong enough and had enough about him to think, I've got to blood this player because I think he's got great potential. Well, who could believe that the potential he did show would go on and, although again, not for West Ham, although I think he had about 190 odd games for West Ham, I think.
Yeah.
And his goal scoring record was quite good, but it belied what was coming at Chelsea, because at Chelsea, he was unbelievable. And I mean unbelievable. The best midfield player in the country by a long shot for me in terms of his contribution, his goal scoring. And how did he become an all-time goal scoring record at Chelsea, beating Bobby Tamblin's record as a midfield player? His timing into the box, his goals from distance. I used to remember him when he came to Upton Park a couple of times, I'd always have a couple of minutes with him when he was with Chelsea. I always say to him, Frank, don't score too many a day, will you? And he said, I'll only try and score one. He said, I'll only try and score one then. As a bit of just a bit of banter.
Yeah, a little bit of banter.
Yeah. And, but no, I've got great admiration for him and the way he sort of bounced from that stick and unpleasantness. And he left, and we got £6-7 million for him or whatever it was at the time. And obviously went on to great things at Chelsea. Another player that's Champions League, championships, premierships, I should say, cups, England caps, over 100 England caps. 100 and whatever it was. I can't remember the exact figure. But over 100 England caps. Some achievements. Beat Bobby Moore's record, which I know that he would, when he was about on, I think Bobby had 108 caps or 106 caps. Bobby Charlton had 108, didn't
about that, yeah.
Yeah. And I think when he was close to getting to Bobby Moore's record, he would have took great pride in trying to equal that and then eventually beat it. Not as a one-upmanship, but just as a level of achievement.
Yeah.
And I think all West Ham fans should be really, really proud of his upbringing and his beginnings were at our great club, West Ham United.
I know that obviously there will be people that will be recoiling at Frank Lampard, but he was. Yeah, but honestly, like you say, for what he did in his career, and I agree. I think that a lot of time has gone past. A lot of it was a bit of pantomime sort of villain sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You always need a little bit of a
you always need a pantomime villain.
Yeah. And it was just very convenient. But I mean, he must have been, there was that very infamous what was it, fans forum at Upton Park where and I believe, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the version of events I heard was the gentleman who stood up and was basically sort of having a bit of a pop that Frank Lampard was getting in the team and Scott Canham wasn't getting a game. And I believe that whether it's a fact or urban myth, apparently it was Scott Canham's uncle that was the gentleman that was sounding off. But that must have been because he'd been only about 17, 18 at the time. That can't have been a nice experience for him, surely.
No, that must have been really hard, to sit on that forum in front of those fans. I don't know how many were there, but there was always a few there. And to hear that from someone from the floor, and I saw that article and I recognised the voice. And it was Scott Canham's uncle.
Okay, so that is a fact.
It was his uncle. Because the reason I know it is because he was always bending my ear. Because Scott was in the youth team. He's always bending my ear. Why ain't he this? Why ain't Scott that? Why ain't Scott doing this? Lampard's always in the team. Why ain't Scott in the team? And so I knew the narrative.
Yeah.
In terms of, I know that's Scott's uncle. And it must, years later when that surfaced, that must have been embarrassing for Scott, because Scott was a good kid. He's not a bad kid at all.
Yeah.
A good kid, good footballer. Didn't quite go all the way, but I think he had a decent career in the game. And it just shows you sometimes people can't see the wood for the trees, really. And you have to understand that, if it's your family and you've got that affinity to somebody, you're going to stick up for them. So I've got no qualms about it. I've got no ill feeling about it. But Harry that night put his head on the block, because no one, even Harry, could not have foreseen the career that Frank eventually had.
Oh no!
Because he was a West Ham player at that point, playing in the team, scoring goals, finding his way, and no one could have foreseen the career he'd have. And that's why I've got great admiration for him. And he's a good kid. He's not a kid anymore. Sorry, I keep saying kids because that's when I was close to them, very close to them.
Yeah,
he's a good lad. He's really, really a good lad. Very humble, and still has a real affection for West Ham and Chelsea, of course, because all his successes at Chelsea. And who could argue against that?
No. No, I mean, taking the sort of partisan sort of element out of sort of it for a moment, which look, we all sort of like pin our colours to the mast. We're West Ham fans, Chelsea fans are sort of over there. Thank you very much. But he had the bulk of his success with Chelsea Football Club, but he was a product of our academy, and I'm someone that when I see a youth academy player progressing into the first team and making it, me personally, I've got more of an emotional attachment to that young kid coming through, because that's someone that in a lot of cases is got a very big emotional attachment to the club, will want to try and do more than possibly someone that we've gone out and splashed 30 million quid on, that actually really does, in a lot of the case, probably doesn't give a monkeys as much as that kid. I've just got more. I can only speak for me, and I'm fairly sure that I'm not the only one that has that sort of viewpoint.
No, I think you're right. Now, once you've played for a club and you've had a good time there, even though you've moved on, you'll always have an affection for them, no matter what. No matter what. And with Frank, and I think, he's not working at the moment. He's not coaching. I don't know what he's doing, but I'm sure he'll come back in the game in some capacity at some point, and prove what a thinker he is about the game and what a good coach he is, etc., etc. And he's got all that to prove. And with his determination and his mindset and the strength mentally that he's got, I think he'll come good. I mean, his departure from Chelsea as the manager, I think, was unfortunate, really unfortunate. I think the job possibly came a little bit too soon for him. But if you get offered the Chelsea job and you're manager of Derby County, who have just lost in the playoffs to get promotion, how could you turn it down? Because you're never going to get that offer again.
Might not come back, yeah.
They may not come back. So you've got to go, what do I do? I mean, I'm learning my trade here at Derby County as a manager in my own right, got very close to the Premier League. What do I do? And obviously his love of Chelsea, there's not many that would turn that offer down.
No, he had faith in his ability. Yeah, he had faith in his ability. All right, it didn't work out the way that I'm sure he would have wanted it to, but he had a go, No,
that's right. That's right.
So, I mean,
he rose to the challenge.
Yeah, a lot of people that I've sort of spoken with make the comparison, and I think Harry actually made it. He turned around and said that the hardest working player that he ever saw was Frank Lampard Jr., and that the second hardest working player that he ever saw was Frank Lampard Sr. So his father must have been a huge influence in his sort of development.
Massive influence, Frank Sr., who I know very well. I'll take task with Harry on that one.
Okay.
Just as a debate. I wouldn't have said, I would agree that Frank Jr. was as hard a worker player as I've seen.
Okay.
Attitude, training, everything. Loved the game. Wanted to do more than just the training session. Always did extras. But there's no one could work harder than Billy Bonds in terms of a player, fitness, everything. But I understand where he's coming from. It's a good link, Frank Jr., Frank Sr. I understand that. But I think I put Billy in the mix, definitely. But Frank Sr. was a grafter as well. No two ways about that. A real grafter. And that's where Junior has learned from Senior.
Yeah.
Two Franks.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Frank Jr. himself said his dad, when he was young, was really tough on him. Really tough on him. And it was always his mum that was his comfort.
Yeah.
But now he looks back and says, that sent me on the right path. He was setting high standards for me.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's good.
Brilliant. Well,
Harry's always good for a quote.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So there we go. You're 3/4 of the way through. We've got Rio, we've got Michael, we've got Frank. 1, 2, 3. There's one space left, and with your
we've got
battered
one
port,
space left, and I've tried to go midfield, defender, midfield, forward, but I couldn't go without, and I'm putting this player into sort of midfield come forward position because he could play either or. So I'm going with my forward. I'm going with Joe Cole.
Joe Cole.
So I'm going with Joe because he was, especially at youth level, he was the entertainer. He caught your eye. He was audacious. He did things you went, Christ, did he really do that? You know, and he wasn't just a one-trick pony. He had a real appetite for the game. If he lost the ball, he'd get up and run after it and try and get a tackle in. He would what's the word? He had a real appetite for the game. I wouldn't say he was always the best trainer in terms of, we've talked a Lampard or someone like that, but he's very naturally gifted and loved just to play football. If he didn't have the ball at his feet, he weren't happy. He had to have the ball at his feet. So every training session had to be with the ball. Joe was happy then. The ball, if we had the ball, he'd be happy. If we did anything, if we did anything audacious as we've got to do running this morning, he'd go, oh, no, we ain't got to do running, have we? Some people would relish the running because they were good runners. Some people didn't relish it because they thought, oh, this is going to hurt. And then the opposite, the runners we got the ball out. Oh shit, I ain't as good a passer as I thought I was. But Joe loved the ball and good player. And the reason I chose, now we can look back at the other three and chose Joe as the number 4, because it really come through that golden generation in that sort of mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
You know, where in the mix comes, and again with Joe, let me complete that. I know it wasn't at West Ham, and he then came back to West Ham, which just showed his love for the club. I have to say that. You know, all these England caps, Champions League, Premier Leagues. So all these 4 players, all England internationals.
Yep.
All Champions League winners. All Premier League winners. And were outstanding players in their own right, regardless of their club. And all their careers started at West Ham United Academy, which we should all be absolutely proud of.
I agree.
The nature of the beast today is players move on. And I think that was the start of that, really. To get a Mark Noble, and I could have put Mark in as a one club player, one club man, who really, I kicked myself for not putting him in. I kicked myself for not putting Tony Cottee and Jermaine Defoe in. I kicked myself for not putting Glenn Johnson in. I kicked myself for putting, you know, Paul Ince, who's not in, who people are going to go, Paul Ince, and start booing, just listening to me. But you can't, you got to go, you go with the talent. Look at the talent. Look at where they started. Look at where they come from. But forget the things that went on. Not forget them, but forgive them, should we say. Forgive them. Because, you know, and we go back as Paul Allen, youngest player ever to play in the FA Cup final. Yes, 17 years old. And so on and so on and so on. So many players that I could choose. And even the unsung heroes, George Paris, Kevin Keynes, Alan Dickens, you know, all those unsung ones that weren't international footballers, but good players for our club, you know, and so on and so on. So many of them, you know, and I'm trying to remember names. James Tompkins, another centre half.
Yeah.
We sold for £11 million. You know, and people go, James Tompkins, 11 million quid come from our academy, West Ham Academy.
Yeah.
Don't forget. And the other one was that one of the last players I signed, which I thought I'd come back to, just to sort of remind everybody that when I was the academy manager, I signed Declan Rice as a 13-year-old.
Whatever happened to him, I wonder?
Yeah, so, you know, does he come on the list? Do I put Declan there?
Yeah.
But, you know, technically speaking, I'd left when he'd made his debut. So, So at the end of the day, his stories for another day. But yeah, so many players. I've got so many great memories of all those players. But I had to pick 4, so I've picked 4 from that golden generation. You know, and their performances and their achievements can't be surpassed, really.
No. With Joe, did I hear the story right? He was training with the first team at 13. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
No.
He might have. What he might have done, because bearing in mind he'd be at school when he used to come down for the holidays. Harry might have said to him, "Come and train with us," and he might have had one session.
Okay.
But bearing in mind, in his last 2 years at school, he was at the national school in Lilleshall.
Okay.
So he went to school in Lilleshall, school just up the road to the National Sports Centre there, and went to the national school, which was based at Lilleshall Sports Centre. So he only really came down to West Ham during that period for his holidays, for the school holidays.
Yeah.
And sometimes his dad used to say to me, George, God bless his soul, lovely man. He used to say to me, I really don't want Joe to come and train with West Ham this week, Tony said, because he's had so many games for England and the national school. He's absolutely knackered, needs a rest. So we'd always go, yeah, it's not a problem, George. Just come on the weekend, because we've got a game for his age group. So you don't need, just come for that weekend and just play in a game for us on the Sunday morning. He'd go, that'll do. So he won't come in during the holiday, but he'll play on the Sunday. So that's what he used to do. And other days he would come in and train, obviously.
Yeah.
So he was a national the national school at Lilleshall. He for his last 2 years at school, and then when he left school, he obviously was full time and came and trained with me with a youth team. But occasionally he would train with the first team because Harry loved him. Harry Redknapp loved him.
I think so did Fergie, didn't he?
Alex Ferguson. I mean, he went to all the clubs. I mean, his dad said to me, Tony said he's going to Man United next week. So I said, George, and he hadn't signed at this point. He hadn't signed for West Ham. So I said, George, why don't you just sign the form now? So we'll put it in the drawer and we'll get it out at the right time. I won't register it at this point. I won't date it, but just sign it. So I had like a bit of peace of mind. So he said, we don't need to do that, Tony. So I said, what do you mean? He said, and he held out his hand. He said, shake my hand. So I shook my hand. He said, there's that contract. He'll be signing it with West Ham. That's what he said to me. Old school, yeah. Because he was a salt of the earth, market trader, ran a little cab company. And his word was his bond. And he kept to it. And as we know, the rest is history. Joe signed with West Ham and had a glittering career. And like all our great players, they get snapped up by other clubs.
If I might just inquire, not specifically about Joe himself, this one, but it's just sort of obviously ties into things that are sort of bubbling away at West Ham currently with sort of youth team players or not being involved in the first team squad, whatever. How much of a detriment do you think it is to the youth team players progressing into the first team squad? Because obviously back in the day, everything was at Chadwell Heath, wasn't it? And I think I've heard sort of like, you know, that Harry would sort of like, if a player was down from the first team squad, he'd sort of turn to you or one of the other youth academy coaches and sort of like borrow a player from you guys.
Right, yeah.
And that obviously now doesn't happen because the youth players tend to be at Chadwell Heath, whereas the first team is at Rush Green. Do you believe that sort of disconnect is to the detriment of the progress of these kids?
I can't speak personally about what's going on at the moment because I'm not there, so I don't know. But my opinion is, and I've said this previously, training on split sites I don't think helps. For those reasons you've said, I don't think it helps. I think if you're on the same site, you may not necessarily be in the same block, but you're on the same site, you're on the same sets of pitches, so you're within shouting distance, if you like.
Yeah.
But I think that doesn't help the development of players transitioning from youth team to first team. Some would argue and say, well, the manager knows the players. The under-21s manager knows the players. So we transition from youth team to 21s. The 21s manager knows the players intimately. He watches them all the time. He has them training with him. And via the under-21s, the first team manager would get to know. So there is a way around it, and I'm sure that's what they do at present at the club. But I'm a massive believer that you should all try to be on one side, because that creates that harmony. You can see where you want to be as a young player. I want to be over there. I want to be in that building or on that pitch, etc. And I said to Rio and Frank together once, I said to him, you didn't want to train with me, did you? And they looked at me and went, what do you mean? So I said, not because you didn't like the training or you didn't like me, hopefully, but you always wanted to be on the next pitch with the first team or the reserve team. When you were young players, you wanted to be in the reserves. When you were the reserves, you wanted to be in the first team. So you could always see where you wanted to be. And that drove you. And he went, and they both went, yeah, you're right. So I think, is that missing today? As I say, I can't speak of what goes on today, but I'm sure, Kenny Brown's now the academy manager, and his job is to produce Kevin Keane, Kenny Brown, whoever, Stevie Potts. There's another player we could have put on the mountain. Keeney we could have put on the mountain, and certainly they would know. They know their job is about producing players and getting them in the first team. And I'm sure they're working hard to do that. I'm sure. But I don't know I don't know David Moyes that well to know what his operational methods are. I don't know. But it doesn't appear that there's been many getting in the team at the moment or even on the fringes of it. So I don't know. So I don't know the quality of the player there intimately enough.
Yeah.
But certainly your first question, I think in an ideal world, one site is what I would want. That's what I would want. Tottenham have got it now. Arsenal have got it because they're under 18s who are the full-time players. They all train at London Colney. The academy train at Hal End. Tottenham have got a massive site. Chelsea have got a massive site. I think Crystal Palace have just moved into a beautiful site in Beckenham. I was talking to their academy manager not 2 days ago because I know him quite well. Gary is it? So and he was saying, yeah, you have to come down. He said, and have a look at our site. It's beautiful. So I said, yeah, I'll pop down and have a look. So as clubs are now developing and finding new sites, it's all one site. Man United, Carrington, they're all on one site.
Yeah.
Man City at the Etihad, although they've got untold fortunes, so they can do anything they want, really.
Yeah.
But I suppose with West Ham, it's about one, the cost of a new site. It would cost a lot of money, and two, finding a patch of land in and around our zone, around the East London, Stratford, inner Essex areas. Where do you find a site big enough? I suppose they're there somewhere, but it's costly. It's costly.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm the same as you. I do think that having that sort of divide between the youth team are over there in a different site to the first team that are over there, I do think that having that, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, the academy players are sort of like out of sight, out of mind as far as the first team management, coaches, players are concerned. And also for the other reason, as you say, that, you've got the younger players that, because they're afar from the first team players, they can't see what they're doing. They can't sort of have the same inspiration that Frank and Rio had back in the day, as you alluded to.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real own goal. And I think that personally, this is just my opinion, as a fan looking in at what's going on in the last few years. And I just think that really needs to change.
Can I just draw a parallel?
Please do.
We won the FA Youth Cup last year, convincingly.
Yes.
With a very good team. And everyone I speak to at other clubs, because I do speak to people at other clubs, because over the years, I get to know people.
Yeah.
And they all say West Ham, good team this year, really good team. Well, last year, but good team this year. If we go back even to the time when I wasn't even there, our Redknapp team as a youth team player got in the FAU Cup final. I think they were beaten by Manchester United, if I believe. And how many players played in the first team? Probably half a dozen in that era. Take it on to the 60s and beyond. We got into the FA Youth Cup final in 75.
Yep.
How many players? Ronnie Boyce was the manager. I was his assistant. So I was at the games. I was on the run with him. I was Ron's assistant. And we had Alan Kirbishley. We had Paul Brush. We had Alvin Martin. We had Jeff Pike. There's about 4 or 5 that played in the first team.
Yep.
Move it on again. 75 to 81 when we won the FA Youth Cup. My first full year as a full-time coach. We won the FA Cup, FA Youth Cup. We got Bobby Barnes. We got Paul Allen. And Everald Laron played in the first team.
He got a bad injury, didn't he?
He got a bad injury, Everald. He was a good player, Everald. And there was always two or three players.
Have I got that wrong? Was he the captain?
He was captain. Everald was captain, of the youth team. So in the 80s, 81, there's always 2 or 3 played in the first team. Paul Allen, Bobby Barnes played loads of games. Move it on again to 95, 94, 95, or 95, 96. We had Rio, Frank in the team. Got into the first team. 2 outstanding players. And there was 1 or 2 others around them. Lee Hodges, Lee Boylan. They didn't make many games, but they played in the first team. Mm-hmm. And David Bartlett, who played at the back, played a few games, went up to Scotland, had a good career in the Scottish Premier League and in Ireland. Move it on again to 99. Cole, Carrick, Garcia, all played in the first team, and etc., etc. And in between that, Glenn Johnson, who wasn't in an FA Youth Cup winning team, went on to play in the first team, as we know. But now this team, who's been an outstanding team, there must be a couple of players in that team that'd be good enough to play in the Premier League, I'm sure. But I don't know them well enough in the middle. But history tells me that. History tells you that. I was talking to a player yesterday. I was at a schoolboy game yesterday, watching a schoolboy game. I won't say where.
No.
And I bumped into a player that played on, I think he was on loan for West Ham, Jeremy Aladier.
Oh, he used to play for Arsenal, didn't he? Yeah.
Ex-Arsenal player.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, his son now is playing for Arsenal.
Okay.
And I was speaking to him, and he was saying, I was talking about West Ham's youth cup team last year, good team. He said, yeah. I said, I watched the final. He said, I was at the Emirates. He said, that they're a good side. He said, a good side. He said, when we won the FA Youth Cup, he said, there was me in the team. There was Jack Wiltshire in the team. And he reeled off a couple of other names. But that only goes to show that if you win the FA Youth Cup, you've got to have a cup, maybe just one, but at least 1 or 2 players that are good enough to play in the youth team. And that, if you like, what's the word I'm looking for? Echoed what I'm saying, really.
Yeah.
That surely they must be good enough. I
agree.
But we'll see.
I agree. Time will tell.
People at West Ham might be saying, Tone, you don't know what you're talking about. So, but here you go. It's only an opinion, like everything else.
Time will tell. But we've kind of veered off the topic just for a moment.
Sorry.
We've gone into a slightly different realm, but that's fine. This is bonus content, viewers. Bonus content. But no, don't apologise, Tone. Absolutely not. You feel free to sort of add to the conversation. I mean, it's absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned. To be honest, it was me that led you down that rabbit hole, in fairness. So I'll take the rap for that. But as I say, no, it's all good. I
don't know. Just to finalise that, I don't know the players intimately enough. I think they're in good hands at the club. You've got Kevin Keane, Kenny Brown, Stevie Potts with the under 21s, and they've got Gerard Prendeville, who's with the 18s, and I think he's moved up to the 21s now because Robbo's gone with the first team, Mark Robson. They're good people. and they're good coaches. So they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. So I think they're in good hands. And let's hope, touch a bit of wood, that we might see a youth team player, get in the team and show his worth.
And hopefully, maybe go on to do something along the lines of those 4 faces.
The 4 on the mountain.
The 4 heads that you've got carved into the mountain. And I'm just going to get it up for the viewers at home to look. There it is. There it is. Stone masonry extraordinaire. You thought that he was good as an academy manager, academy coach, youth team coach, all of the roles that he fulfilled in the 43 years at West Ham. But have a look at that, ladies and gentlemen. That is absolutely superb. Tony, honestly, that is outstanding, considering that a few days ago, before I sent you that YouTube tutorial on stone masonry for dummies, you had absolutely no idea one end of a chisel from the other. The hammer was sort of like, it was part of our badge, but that was about it as far as you was concerned. Now that is absolutely superb what you've done there. Brilliant.
Okay, Rob, thank you.
No, honestly, I just footed the ladder and just drunk cups of tea whilst you was sort of hammering away, and I was dodging bits of sort of like flying masonry, but I had my hard hat on and me high vis, so it was all good. We was fine. But Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure and a delight to spend the last hour and 6 minutes with you chatting about various stories to do with West Ham. Is there anybody else that you'd like to give any honourable mention to? You've obviously reeled through a few as we've gone along. Is there anybody else that you feel deserves a mention?
Well, Jermaine Defoe, I think, who was a great striker for us. He could have been amongst the honours. But there's so many, the young son ones, in terms of like I said to you before, Kevin Keane's, George Paris, even Matt Rush. That Matty Rushmore is named after, shall we say?
Yeah.
Good lads, good players, worked hard. All the young sung heroes. Chrissy Cohen, who Mark Noble really. Next time I bump into Mark, he'll say to me, "How comes I didn't get up on that mountain?" Because he won't hold back on his opinion. But
if he watches our YouTube channel, I would be absolutely astonished.
Someone might tell him. Someone might tell him.
Send him the link, Tone. I'll send you the link. Send him the link. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah, and Eamon Dolan, of course, who lost his life far too early. What a great lad he was, Eamon, and played a few games for the first team. Ended up being academy manager of Reading and died sadly. Far too young. I'd like to give him a mention. Do you remember Billy Memmott? You wouldn't know Billy Memmott.
The name does ring a bell, actually.
He was a good striker, Billy. He could have, should have, maybe but could have been a very, very good player. Ended up going to Scotland and had a good career in Scotland, Billy.
Did he play for St Mirren?
I think he played for a number of clubs up there. I mean, I've got a list here somewhere of players and who they might have played for. God help us. And he was a Republic of Ireland international as well, under 21s. Yeah. But no, he was. And I apologise for any players that I've omitted, because
there will be a few, but
there'll be a few. I can't remember every single player.
You'll have to forgive him.
Yeah.
He'll buy you a pint next time he sees you, lads. How about that? Ain't bad. But anyway, Tony, we're going to end the broadcast there. As I say, really do sincerely appreciate your time, and we'll hope to collaborate with you at some point in the not too distant future.
Okay, Rob, enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
And for you guys at home, please don't forget, as I always ask you to do, to drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're new around here. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for alerts on new content. And as always, we thank you very much indeed for your support in this matter. Tony's dropped out there. Just from me, I'd just like to say, come on, you Irons. The West Ham Massive are pleased to support Iron Supporting Food Banks. They are a group of West Ham fans and friends inspired by the work of other football food banks around the country. They collect food and cash donations for a Newham food bank in Beckton, who supplies 7 distribution centres in the borough 7 days a week and hand out several hundred 3-day emergency food packs every month to families in need. They are also working with other groups to improve conditions for vulnerable adults and children in the Newham community. You can help by making a donation to their Just Giving page. You will find the link to this in the description section of the video details in this stream. Thanks for your support. Come on, you Irons.